All right. Hi, everyone. Today's focus is going to be on our milestones assessment. So, ERB is a nonprofit educational insights organization. We've been serving schools around the world for over 90 years. We believe in the power of unlocking every student's full potential with access to quality education for all learners, regardless of their background or circumstances. Our core belief is that assessment data and learning tools should be used equitably, not as a gatekeeper, but as a gateway to learning and growth. We celebrate the value and dignity of all, from students and their families to our employees and member schools. We work diligently to create tools for learning that are research-based and recognize the uniqueness of each student. We believe that information about student learning facilitates progress over time and is a valuable tool for unlocking student potential because it helps identify strengths and areas for growth. With reliable data and valid interpretations, we can best support students' learning needs and aspirations. Our assessments and learning tools go beyond the traditional measures of academic performance to include an understanding of the student's sense of well-being and belonging, as well as the social emotional tools they use to navigate their environment. That's just a little bit about where ERB is going, our current vision. We've actually gone through a lot of updating and increasing. We really do have a plan to make some amazing additions to our offerings, our programming, our assessment, with really that idea to help with data analysis and insight, to really help understand the whole child, not just very specific areas of assessment. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into talking a little more about the milestones, just a little bit of how this is going to work. If you have any questions, I will be taking those at the end. You'll notice at the bottom of your screen, of your Zoom screen, there should be a Q&A button. And if you'll add any questions you have along the way to that area, we'll answer the questions there. We're not really monitoring the chat, so please try to place your questions in that Q&A area. All right, so what are milestones? Milestones are a set of benchmark achievement assessment tests designed to be taken multiple times in a year. And so just a couple of points to make out. If you are used to our CTP summative assessment that's been around for dozens of years, used by hundreds of independent schools across the country to help assess their students, Milestones is really an add-on to this. It's a supporting area, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we do also offer it as a standalone option also, and I'll be getting into some more detail on that as well. The idea is you can add these milestones, mini versions of the CTP, onto your existing CTP or standalone. And they're mini because they just focus on reading comprehension and mathematics. And then currently we are focused on the core grade levels of testers we have across the country, grades 3 through 8. There have been some talk about expanding it either to lower grades or upper grades, but no really updates at this time. It's something we are considering for the future. Currently only available to grades 3 through 8. All right, so these are just a couple of the standout points of milestones. Once again, if you know CTP, many of these areas overlap with what the real strengths of our CTP assessment. You get the same national and independent school centile rankings and scores, so very comparable to what you see there. I already mentioned it's focused on reading comprehension and mathematics. Same standards that you're used to with CTP. It measures ILA, the International Literacy Association standards, NCTE, National Council for Teachers of English, and CTM, the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics. If you're used to the CTP, then you know the test is a one time of year summative, either given in the fall or the spring. Milestones is set up so you actually have 3 testing seasons. If you add milestones on, you can test in the fall, winter, and or spring between your CTP and your milestones testing. Be aware that milestones is only available online. We really thought that that was important to make it easy to administer very quickly in those other 2 seasons, and also to give you the results very quickly. With online testing, you have access to the data within 1 or 2 days. And so it makes it more actionable, more proactive to have access that quickly. And I am going to talk a little bit more about our 360 Access new reporting portal, which is also in its 3rd year, just like Milestones. which was really designed with milestones in mind. So I'm going to show you later a few screenshots of what the reporting looks like and how it takes advantage of the milestones information to have really accessible data at your fingertips for all of your test administrations. And then, of course, the real kind of idea of milestones is not just having data from one snapshot during the year or one CTP testing, but to have multiple insights throughout the year, to benchmark interim tests, prepare for your CTP, or prepare for whatever standards you're looking at as well. And then finally, just want to point out, when we designed Milestones for several years before it was launched, we actually brought together a group of subject matter experts in reading comprehension and mathematics and performed a curriculum mapping study. And the idea of that was to determine which skills and standards from the NCTE, NCTM, ILA that I mentioned earlier, we should focus on in each one of the areas in the fall, the winter, and the spring. So it is broken down. You do not get a full, all of the standards from these areas. It's what's appropriate in each particular season that students should be covering. All right, so why should you use Milestones? It's really based on these three core areas: consistency, flexibility, and timeliness. The consistency is that if you're using CTP already, or even if you're just going to do the 3 milestones, it is based on the same CTP norms and standards because the two are equated to each other. Milestones and CTP are on the same scale score range, built on the same norm pools and bell curves that you're used to with CTP. Now that we're in the 3rd year, we are starting to use actual milestones data as well. Before, we were leaning just on CTP information. So you always have that consistency and that background of what you're used to with CTP. And then, of course, this just helps with enhanced validity and reliability in our testing that ERB has always been known for. And of course, also for your score interpretation. The same ways that you look at data in CTP, you're able to look at in Milestones as well. So that consistency and just making it easy to transition or add on those milestone scores. Flexibility, the idea that it is just focused on 2 subtests, reading and mathematics. Each one is 40 minutes long. So in 2 class periods, you can have all of your testing done in the fall and the winter, 2 in the fall, 2 in the winter, before doing your full battery of CTP in the spring, if that's the way you go. I'm going to talk about different implementation options a little bit later. And then, of course, just like CTP, we also offer very large testing windows. So you can test within the fall range. I'm going to show the dates a little bit later, within the winter range or the spring testing season, anytime you want. We do have some recommendations of how to spread those out and to, make sure you're kind of having equal, looks at your data, but you have a lot of flexibility in those areas as well. And then, of course, timeliness, being able to have that actionable within 24 to 48 hours of when you test just allows you to get that information, hit the ground running, and make decisions, start, disseminating it to faculty, to families, however you want to share that information. And the 360 Access portal makes it very easy to use that information and that data. And we'll cover that a little bit more. So this is just kind of a slide that walks you through the different implementation options. Once again, if you're used to CTP, we used to only have these 2 options at the bottom. So you either gave the CTP in the fall or you gave the CTP in the spring. Only one time a year was option. Now with Milestones, we've added on these 3 new implementation options as well. So if you are a fall CTP tester and want to stay in that testing season, you can add on the winter and spring milestones. If you are a spring CTP tester, you can add on a fall and winter milestone. And then, of course, there's also the 3 milestone option with no CTP. And then just to give you an idea of those date ranges, as I mentioned earlier, we have very wide ranges. You see August to February for your CTP, and a 3 to 4 month range for doing your winter milestones, and then another several month range to do your spring milestone. I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but you want to try to spread those administrations out as far as possible and also as equal amount of time between each one of those administrations if possible. Obviously, this is going to give you a better indication if you spread them out of growth from one to the next. And if you have them even, you'll also be able to kind of compare them evenly as well. With that said, we have these wide date ranges because we know scheduling is tricky. We know that there's a lot of other things going on at your school, and you have to schedule around other events and other things that are happening at school. So these dates are completely wide open to you. You just want to take that into account when you're both scheduling and looking at your data later. And then finally, if you were just doing milestones across all three areas, then these would be the date ranges that you have. These testing season dates are all available in the Comprehensives portal, where you do all of your testing and the kind of legacy reporting. There's a tab we've added there that has all of this testing date, and it's also available on our main ERB website. If you navigate to either the Milestones and or CTP area, you'll be able to find all of these testing seasons there as well. All right, so now it's on to the data. What can you do with this milestones information once you've actually administered 1, 2, and eventually 3 and or your CTP? So obviously, I mentioned before, 360 Access is the way to go. This is where you can really get the most usage out of your milestones information. I'm just going to be sharing some screenshots that give you an idea of how this will work. Be aware that we have other recorded webinars that do a better overview of 360 Access and walk you through all the different reporting. They're live walkthroughs, so you get to see the interactivity and how dynamic the reporting portal is. And of course, you can reach out to your member services director if you have any questions and want a deeper dive as well. One of the things that's great about 360 Access is that you see all of this information on the dashboard, but anywhere you have these kind of color links, you can click on those to do a deeper dive, and it will take you deeper into the program. And like I said, just the interactivity is really great. So this would be one of the performance reports from 360 Access, what I would call one of our kind of big picture 30,000-foot view reports. I give you an overview by grade level or by subgroup that you create, but you see how built into 360 Access by subject area, you can compare a school's fall milestone to their winter milestone to their spring. And this is basically showing you what percentage of your students are above norm, at norm, or below norm, and how that compares to the independent norm, which in a typical bell curve, the independent will always have this 23, 54, 23. You can also change this to a national norm. You can change it to an association norm. And so you have multiple ways of looking at that data. And then, of course, you have it for both mathematics and reading. And then once again, just to point out the interactivity of Access, you can click on View Student List and immediately see how all of the individual students in this particular group performed across these three areas. Moving on, we also have another report called Achievement within 360 Access. This report is only for milestones. We designed it so that you can look at a snapshot of all three of your test administrations within a year, your milestones and or CTP, and look at how things compared from the fall, the winter to the spring. And you're going to see here an average of scaled score of how your students performed over the course of those three test administrations, as well as where the independent school norm average mean score performed over those areas. So you really do get an idea of how your students are performing, if they're on par with other independent schools, if they're gaining ground, losing ground, all of that you'll be able to very easily see within 360 Access. And then moving on, the next step from Achievement would be our Achievement multi-year report, which is basically the same report, but allows you to put multiple years in to look at the data. So if you go back, however many years with CTP, you'll see that information in there. But as you build up your milestones data over time, you will see how that flows also. And you just get all of these additional data points to really track where your students are and how they perform versus the independent school norm. Moving on, really my favorite report, really in all of 360 Access, which I think is the most helpful for teachers, specialists, learning specialists, guidance counselors, administrators too, but really the classroom is where it stands out the most, is any of our content mastery areas, whether it's group information or independent or individual student information, really very helpful. And once again, it stands out for the milestones, interim testing throughout the year. Not only do you get scores at the subtest level, but you also get them at the subcategories that are broken down within the NCTM, NCTE standards and so forth. And you can see how the students performed in each one of their seasons, in each one of their administrations within each of those areas versus the independent school average. You always want to have that comparison as well. So you can really get an idea if students are gaining, if they continue to struggle, and really make that actionable throughout the year. And then, of course, you can do a deeper dive. Once again, this is a link that you can click on. If you click on mathematics, it's going to take you to the actual standards that are being tested in that particular time period. So we can look at the fall standards that are being tested, the winter ones by clicking on this tab, and then the spring CTP all standards being tested there. And you can see how your students performed in that particular area. Obviously, this 30% shows that applying numbers using multiple representations and understand plotting fractions is an area that this group struggled with. So really allows you to dive in deep into what you're looking at. And then finally, just want to mention all of that same information can be looked at an individual student area. So you can really differentiate instruction. You can talk to a parent about a student's strengths and areas where they need some additional support. Here we're looking at the students' sub-score reports across the subtests over each of the test administrations. We can dive in deeper and look at how they performed within each subtest and all of the subcategories across each one of their test administrations. And then finally, down to the nitty-gritty, we can see within each subcategory those same standards we saw for the group and how they answered every question on the test, whether it was right or wrong, whether they skipped a question, or if they ran out of time at the end and were not able to reach some of the questions. And then those are presented in order of difficulty. So just really powerful information that is available there. So that's really the data and what you'll be able to access. As I mentioned before, we have recorded webinars and you can talk to your MSDs about other ways of diving into the data and getting more detailed. I just want to conclude with how we want to make sure that your implementation is successful. So please reach out to your member services director. Know that we also have an amazing technical support team that you can reach at the number listed. I'll have the email address on the next screen. You see the hours they're available. We can help you get started with your program. Know that we also offer paid interpretation workshops for you, your faculty, parent workshops to help support you and do really detailed dives into your data. And we're ready to help you get started anytime this year. So I just want to conclude. I think we're pretty much out of our time. Any questions that you might have, go ahead and throw them in the Q&A area. I'm happy to answer those questions. You see here the support number, technical support, has its own email address listed. If you are ready to place your milestones or CTP order, you can go straight to ordering.erblearn.org. And of course, any of the three of us member services directors are also available to you to answer any specific questions you might have. So any questions? All right, well, I thank you all for attending today. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and good luck with this year's school year.